Charlie, I know you didn't get too much sleep last night. I know you were sitting courtside for that South Carolina-Tennessee game. Before we get into the bracketology stuff, let's enjoy the basketball moment here. What was your immediate reaction after watching that shot from Cardoso?
Well, the entire game was one of disbelief. As I'm watching this, and I'm one of those people who also took South Carolina against the field over the last couple of weeks, and I'm watching all of that go away as they're blowing a 23-point lead. So that was one element of disbelief. And then the fact that Tennessee, as you guys mentioned, had the game won and then suddenly didn't because somebody hit a three-pointer for the first time in their life. It took me about 10 minutes after the game. You know how the teams will have cooling off periods before they talk to the media? Well, I needed a cooling off period to relax and kind of replay it in my mind and thought, what did I just see? That can't be real. But it was very real. And the excitement and on the South Carolina side and the disappointment on the Tennessee side was very, very raw and real. And that's what we love about the sport or sports in general.
We'll see how it impacts Tennessee and Kelly Harper going forward. This is a team, again, that has dealt with some injuries this year. But let's stick with South Carolina and the rest of the one seeds right now, Charlie. I know right now, coming into the day, you got South Carolina, Stanford, Iowa, and Texas on that one line. I'll just give it to you kind of broadly. Any sort of movement possible on the one line, or are these fairly solid heading into championship day today?
No, we could see some movement. Now, not with South Carolina. They've been set as the overall #1 seed for a while. So even if they'd have lost yesterday, it wouldn't have impacted this. And Stanford, by winning in the semis in the Pac-12 tournament, got themselves solidly on the one line. They're not going anywhere, even if they lose to USC. But those last two spots, with USC trailing right behind, I think are up for grabs. If USC wins the Pac-12 tournament, beating Stanford today, you got to put the Trojans on the one line and knocking out Texas. And I'm not sure if winning the Big 12 tournament will even be enough then for Texas to overcome the Trojans. Because, first of all, USC's resume and the number of top 25 net wins is equal to Stanford's as the best in the country. And they will now have had a win against two wins against another #1 seed. Texas can't say that even if they win the Big 12 tournament. And essentially, they both will have finished second or third in their league during the regular season and both won their conference tournaments. All things being then equal with those, then you start to kind of go to the metrics. So you look at who did you beat and who did you lose to, and USC stacks up better there. So USC's playing for a whole heck of a lot today. And Iowa is too. Iowa wins the Big Ten tournament, they're going to be a #1 seed. But if they don't, and USC wins and Texas wins, then Iowa's going to fall to the 2 line, and those other two, I think, will be #1 seeds. So there's a lot more going on today on Championship Sunday for the top seeds than we've normally ever seen.
And we know how important it is to have a host site. And so for those 4 seeds that are working to get those, to lock up those hosting positions, do you see any movement in those?
Possibly, but the only team coming from behind that's still playing, that's on the 5 line right now, is Kansas State. And the team they would try to knock off would be Oklahoma. So they're both in the same conference. They could have a shot at each other. I think that's really where the only movement's going to come from with the top 16. I think the rest of it's kind of set. The one question mark, I guess, would be Virginia Tech with the injury status of Kitley that you guys discussed so well earlier. But I think they were far enough in the top 16 that no matter what we hear, or if we ever hear anything about Kitley's status for the NCAA tournament, I think they're still going to be placed in the top 16. And Notre Dame is a team that's played themselves right deeply into the top 16 now. They would have been a question mark 10 days ago, 2 weeks ago. Not so much anymore.
And Charlie, it's been a fun week of basketball, man. I mean, it has been truly fun. Who are some of the teams that have helped themselves the most? And conversely, who are some of the teams that have hurt themselves the most this week?
Well, I mentioned Notre Dame. I think I would put them right at the top of the list in terms of teams who have helped themselves. And it's not even just in the ACC tournament, but if you go back a little more than a week, they got the win over Louisville. Then they had the win over Virginia Tech. And that was when Kitley was still playing for Virginia Tech. And then they've got the 2 wins in the ACC tournament. So even if they were to fall today to NC State, I think they're solidly in the top 16 because of the work they did leading up to it. Another team that's really helped themselves, we talked about earlier, Tennessee. Even though they didn't win, they played well toward the end of the season, and they played the best team in the country as well as any team has all season long. As we said, they had the game won. So I'm bumping them up out of the 8 line to the 7 line based on a good performance, even though it was in a loss. I would say those two teams have helped themselves the most, heading into the next week and as we move to Selection Sunday. The one team that's hurt themselves the most, and it wasn't just in the last 2 days, has been Colorado. If you remember the first top 16 reveal, Colorado was a 1 seed, and they've lost 5 of 6 since then, and they lost 4 in a row in the regular season, but all 4 were against top 20 teams. But then they had a season finale loss at home to Washington State that was crippling, and then not being able to finish the job against Oregon State in the Pac-12 quarterfinals. They get eliminated in a game that they were leading in the fourth quarter. That takes them out of the top 16 even. So they've fallen in just over 2 weeks from a 1 seed to a 5 seed. That's definitely a team that's hurt themselves quite a bit. I don't think they're going to be hosting games in Boulder. And I think they were already selling tickets at one point. they might have to do some money exchanges there in Boulder because I don't see the Buffs hosting those games anymore.
Charlie, obviously a lot of talk about bubble teams this time of year. I know you're fielding calls and probably talking to a lot of people right now. But a lot of eyes on Columbia right now, potentially stealing a bid. Do you see that happening? If
they beat Princeton, the Ivy's getting 2 teams in, for sure. Now, if Princeton wins, Columbia, I think, remains on the outside looking in. Their resume just isn't quite there. High 50s in the net. They don't have any super quality wins. The only real good win this year was over Princeton in the regular season. So that's going to be the league, though, you're right, that all the other bubble teams that are just in the field are going to be watching very closely because Princeton's a definite at large. The Ivy definitely gets 2 if Columbia wins that game.
And Charlie, we talked about injuries earlier in the show. What do you think about teams withholding injury info until after the bracket reveal with hopes of not getting penalized? And is there anybody that sort of set the blueprint for that?
Well, I think we saw that last year with Notre Dame and Olivia Miles. She got hurt late in the season, and she remained day to day, even though I think most of us, having watched the injury and watched how she was moving around on the bench, didn't really have a whole lot of hope that she was going to play again. Ultimately, she didn't and didn't even play this season. But I think that sets kind of the tone for let's not say what we know because we want to get the best seed we can. And the rules is that inclusion in the tournament is not going to be impacted by any injuries, but your seed could be lowered as a result of knowing that a certain player of key value is not going to be available to play in any of the NCAA tournament games. And Notre Dame really wanted to hold on to that hosting gig last year, and it worked out for them by being a little coy maybe with the injury status of Miles. So I would expect to see some of these other players hurt for us to not really know all the information or to be declared fully out of the NCAA tournament until we actually get to tip time and their first round games.
Yeah, I don't know how it benefits a team to just outwardly share that information because I just feel like it can only hurt. But we'll see. We'll see how it plays out. Charlie Creme, thank you so much for joining us in studio. Charlie will be sleeping in this studio for the next 7 days until we have him on our Bracketology show next Monday. Charlie, thank you very much. We appreciate it.
Of course. Great to be with you guys.